Let's update you on the situation in Ukraine. Of course, we've had this conference going on in London, but in Ukraine itself, the counter-offensive, we're being told, continues. But air raid sirens rung out this morning, with defences having to cope with a Russian missile attack at a military airfield. President Zelensky says progress is slow, although the Prime Minister says they have regained some 113 square kilometres, or liberated, as he said, of ground. Putin warning, though, that he could deploy a new weapon that could carry 10 nuclear warheads and could be used in combat soon. It might be bluster, but of course there are concerns about what might happen to the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant as well. Let's get the thoughts now of defence editor at the Evening Standard, Robert Fox, who can join us. Robert, we obviously reflect on President Zelensky's assertion at that conference. This is not a movie, so we don't see the sort of troops going over the top and so on. But I'm just looking at this line from the Prime Minister, 113 square kilometres liberated. That's not an awful lot of territory, is it?
Well, I think that actually, if anything, the expectation management by the Western allies, including Britain, has been really quite wide of the mark, because I think this was always going to be tough. It's going to go a long time. The war looks at the moment, particularly if you see the mindset of the Ukrainian leadership and the Russian leadership, it's going to go on for a long time. And what we're seeing is, I think, very few of the Western backers were prepared for this. Some of them are beginning to prepare for it now. On the offensive, very quickly, Mark, we're only in the very, very opening stages. And indeed, it's a very close contest in many aspects.
But we do have an assessment from this Wagner group and Prigozhin, who's talked of Russian defence officials lying to Putin, saying that they're covering up very serious losses on the front.
Yes, but forgive me while I laugh, because Prigozhin really is playing the role, Mark, of not the useful idiot in the old Marxist terms, but he's the useful clown. And, I think Putin is well aware of what Prigozhin is up to. And he's a lightning conductor. Yes, they have been losing an awful lot. So have the Ukrainians. And the problem is, as usual, it's a story of quantity and quality. The quantity is being lost on the Russian side, but the quality, the losses in the Ukrainian ranks, they're graduates, they're tech experts, they were people who were normal citizenry. And this is a thing, how long can Zelensky's team sustain losses at this level?
And how long can they sustain losses without air cover? We've still got this continuing debate or discussion about the F-16s. Will they be deployed? How many will come and so on? Will that make a huge difference?
You bet. You bet, to the whole air picture, where I think a lot of the principal backers, led by the United States, have been neglectful, really neglectful. They've talked about, the all-arms, combined arms combat battle. Key part of that is air. And forget about the F-16s. They're not going to get there for months. They're lucky to get them in by the end of the year. But it's actually what's happening in the close air battle over the fighting that you've been describing in Zaporizhzhia like that. That's where the helicopter gunships, Russian attack fighters have been used very, very effectively, and Ukraine doesn't have enough air defense to go around to really do the job that's required there to protect the frontline troops and to protect the cities and the infrastructure as well.
Now, talking of Zaporizhzhia, we've got that nuclear plant there. Now, Zelensky has warned of a plot, a terrorist attack on the power station that could send clouds of radiation over Europe. Do you think we ought to take that rather more seriously than we would normally, bearing in mind what happened to that dam?
Well, we have to take Zaporizhzhia very, very seriously indeed. And that's why Mr. Grassi of the IAEA, the international authority, went to warn all sides all over again about it. One of the biggest nuclear plants in the world. It has a potential to cause infinitely more damage serially than the 1986 Chernobyl accident. But we are looking at ecocide. We're looking at serious damaging effects on civilian populations. As you rightly say, we have seen and are still feeling the effects of the Kharkovka dam, which seems to me rather unfortunately typical of the Russian military thinking.
Yeah.
did the Kharkovka dam, it's absolutely okay, for very short-term gains. But the long-term damage to everybody is going to be enormous.
However, we have been speaking, of course, regularly to Ukrainian MPs and political leaders. They still seem determined to actually see this through, that it's not breaking their spirit or their will.
You're absolutely right. This is the thing. I've been talking to a couple of MPs very recently, only this week. They've been in London for the conference. There is no base for negotiations. And actually, out of this so-called offensive, that's what the Western allies have wanted, almost in collusion with China. If only they could fight themselves to a standstill, so Moscow and Kiev realize that they have to begin negotiation. But there is absolutely no sign of that whatsoever.